Welcome to Akandace. Thank you for tuning in. The more I dive into African history, especially right now in the Nile Valley, I am just so excited about the accomplishments of these Africans. I hope you will watch the entire video, and I hope you will continue to watch my videos on Africa. It's a journey, a lot of material, a lot of research, but at least we have the truth as far as we have the truth. This story is about Narmer, considered the first dynasty king. Narmer is so interesting because here he was in the southern part of Upper Egypt, and the other king was in the northern part of Egypt. This southern king decided to control from his domain to the Mediterranean Sea, say the south and the north. And it gives you an idea of what these African kings were thinking. They wanted to achieve magnificence from the early on because he wanted to combine the two kingdoms together under his rule. He determined that he was the right person for it. He put together the plan, and he got the men of his region together, the Nubians and other African men from the Berber, we believe, and created a new kingdom. But even though this is a theatrical performance, it is based on facts for the most part. So enjoy. Thank you. Training was not purely martial. Priests taught warriors ritual discipline, invoking gods like Mantu, the god of war, Sekhmet, the lioness goddess, and Apektemek, the Nubian lion god. Warriors were linked to gods of war and protection. Offerings of bread, beer, and incense were made to these deities before campaigns. Worship, bread, beer, and grain offerings tied to fertility and resurrection. Semitic groups introduced warrior cults emphasizing covenant and sacrifice, while Cushitic practices emphasized fertility, cattle, and continuity of life, both fused in Nile Valley military. Narmer himself was regarded as sprung from a line of local rulers, as Menesto, the priest, called Narmer a Thanite, or native of the nome of Sudanese, Dennis in Upper Egypt in the neighborhood of Abydos. In addition, an Egyptologist, professor per Cambridge University, Dr. Akandace Ahmed, in Egypt, The Truth About Nefertiti and Narmer, published July 10, 2014, declared a local named Narmer, who was from the south, was the first king of Egypt and a Cushite who had some form of chiefdom. As a chief, Narmer established a royal household and army of men. A temple was built in Upper Egypt. It depicts the Upper Egypt king on the throne. Blunt weapon types, hieroglyphic writing, and decorated stone pottery type have been credited to Narmer. These described artifacts were found together at Nekhen, which came to be known as the Narmer Palette. These artifacts would be found in Hierakonpolis, the first settlement in Upper Egypt. Hierakonpolis was a grand modern settlement for its time. Employed were positions consisted of developers, farmers, pottery designers, and builders. Administrators and craftsmen were established before the merge of Upper and Lower Egypt. We believe at least three factors signaled the first war between Upper and Lower Egypt: the need for more men, securing the northern border, and strengthening the king's position in the region. Authority had to be centralized where the instability was. This is why, sometime after the unification, the early king moved his capital to Memphis, more than 400 miles north, placing himself directly at the frontier. This was a strategic decision Lower Egypt set at the entry point of Africa, and if instability or outside groups entered through the delta, the danger would eventually reach the south. Even centuries later, Ramesses II understood this. More than 1,000 years later, the Ramesside kings rebuilt the same order in the Delta for the same reason. They constructed Ramesses, a military capital, a hybrid city built for war, a frontier stronghold in the northeastern frontier, stationed the army there, and placed the royal court directly on the border. Their goal was clear: prevent another Hyksos takeover. The Hyksos had risen during a period when the Delta was politically fragmented and unprotected. The Ramessides were determined that such a breach would never happen again. Just like in Narmer's time, the Ramessides expanded administration, built treasuries and storehouses, and used writing to track tribute and control the region. Protection and tribute remained the backbone of the state. The army secured the frontier, and the Delta supplied grain, labor, and wealth. Ramesses II ruled from the Delta because that northern frontier had to be guarded, and by the time of Ramesses III, that same region became the battleground where Egypt confronted the Sea People, a hard-fought victory recorded in Egyptian text. The logic never changed. Whoever controlled the Delta controlled the safety of the entire Nile Valley. Narmer gave the signal, and the army began to march north, while others sailed by sea. People along the riverbanks saw a southern coalition of stalwart men unlike anything they had known. His army likely included Nubian groups from the southern Nile Valley and Berber-related groups from the western desert, allies whose presence signaled that Upper Egypt had gathered its full strength. After reaching the Fayum, Narmer was revived. The long march north had tested his men, but now he stood at the edge of the Delta, the place where the future of the two lands would be decided. To the locals, this was not simply an army, it was a message. As he entered the Delta, Narmer saw no resistance at first. The land ahead looked still, almost unprepared, and for a moment it seemed the victory would come quickly. Then, over the sand slopes, he saw men emerging and moving towards his forces. Narmer watched as his army maintained a steady, unbroken push north. His men did not pause or hesitate. Their advance carried the weight of promises, of the gods, of rewards, and of authority. His presence alone carried authority. Narmer's victory is remembered as the moment Upper Egypt first became known for its warrior kings. After the battle, cosmic order was restored. And what do I mean by that? A lot. The entire Nile Valley was now under one speech, one ritual law, and one administrative hierarchy. Writing spread northward, allowing officials to document tribute, track goods through a single administrative language used for orders, records, and ritual terms, and enforce uniform obligations. Local Delta chiefs were replaced or subordinated to royal officials, creating one chain of command. Ritual practices were harmonized, so offerings, festivals, and burial customs followed the same rules across both regions. Titles and offices became uniform, eliminating rival centers of authority. Tribute was redistributed through a central treasury. Administrative boundaries were reorganized to align the Delta with the Southern model of governance. Together, these changes transformed two competing regions into a single stable order. With the Delta now being secured, the Southern system now governed the entire Nile Valley. What began as a battlefield victory became a new political order. The unification of Egypt required more than a military victory. It required a way to reconcile two incompatible sacred systems into a single cosmic order. Osiris and Isis were introduced as unifying figures who embodied both Cushitic depth and the beliefs carried by the Natufian-related northern lineages. Osiris represented ancestral continuity, kingship renewal, and the southern order, while Isis embodied the giver of fertility, role rooted in African maternal power, alongside the ritual practices associated with Natufian lineages. The end.